If you're only going to go after that average working male in particular companies, everybody's going after them, you will never be able to win this war. When your consumer base has both genders, so should your employee base.
What is the business model of HerKey?
The very unsexy, tough problem to solve. Today 45% of our graduates are women. Building that strong network and building that strong network of people who are going to push you up, down, and telling you your career is not important. And the really biggest reason for that was that we persevered when things were really, really tough.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Startup Story Spotlight. This is your host Lata, and joining with me on today's episode is a mompreneur and the founder of India's leading career engagement platform for women, finally, called HerKey. Helping over 3.5 million women across India not only find suitable jobs, but also helping them stay engaged in their careers, also helping them grow throughout their journeys is what HerKey does. Because you see, 45% of our graduates in the country are women, which is great, but the participation of these women in the workforce is still very lower. Why is that? What can you do about it? Why should you care as a person, as a company, as a male counterpart? And what do platforms like and how do platforms like HerKey help women in their careers, help women restart their career journey? And if you're a woman, how do you claim what's rightfully yours? How do you negotiate salary even after a long career break? How do you raise funds for your startup? We talk lots of it in the video, so check out the episode, because ladies, this is the video you need to see to get on the field. And for men, Hi Neha, thank you so much for joining this conversation. Welcome to Startup Story Spotlight. It is so great having you here. Before we get to your journey, which is where you've built this whole business of HerKey, first I want to quickly talk to you about the women workforce participation in India. Despite various initiatives, women's participation in workforce is still lower, and even further lower at the executive level, right? And one of the key reasons that you've mentioned is these women are not as engaged in their careers as their counterparts, say men, right? Why do you think that is, number one? And what is HerKey doing differently to help maximize women's earning potential beyond just finding them the suitable job opportunities?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that. And yeah, it's that statistic which actually got me all riled up on starting this company. And it is the female labor force participation rates in India. We are at 20% overall and 15% in urban India. Luckily, over the last 9 years since we've been in existence, that number seems to have gone up, but I think the jury is still out on how much the increase has been. But there's still a very, very long way to go. China is at 60% female labor force participation rates. America is at 55%. Male participation rates in India are 80%. Yeah, so, in a snapshot, that really shows the kind of gap that exists. And along with that, the kind of opportunity that exists to be able to bridge that gap. Now, the reasons why this gap exists are multiple, right? And of course, the biggest reason is that women in India are not expected to stay engaged in the careers. Yeah, and it starts from a very early age. In fact, the problem doesn't lie in education. Today 45% of our graduates are women, are young girls. But the problem lies in our expectation from those girls. Usually fathers are educating their daughters to find a good husband and not a good job. And once they found that good husband, they don't feel like they need that good job. So there's a huge dropout that happens at the start itself, where women don't even start their careers after graduating. Now, the ones that do, the second big drop-off that happens is usually during motherhood, because once a baby comes into a woman's life, there is this definitely this huge social and family pressure, and then it becomes your own pressure on yourself, where you feel that, hey, you will be a bad mother if you're not there full time for your child. And of course, that's something that I can relate to because it happened to me too. And that's when you see a huge bunch of women that completely drop out of the workplace and completely stop engaging with their careers. And that is why what we're trying to do is ensuring that, look, I don't think we can do away with the fact that, yes, there are a lot of life events that happen in a woman's life. And those life events end up affecting that woman far more than it affects the man. Yeah. I mean, even the man got married and even the man had a child. But that man is expected to keep his career at the forefront. Yeah. And that is why, and the whole family, the whole society rallies behind the man's careers for that. Now, when it comes to the woman, what we are trying to do as a platform is to ensure that she just stays engaged with her career despite what life stage she's at. Yeah. And this we've realized over time needs to be a threefold process. First and foremost, of course, we need to ensure there are enough opportunities for women. Yeah, so especially when they want to get back to work, how do we make sure that enough companies will take them back? And this is something that JobsForHer really focused on when we started. But over time, we also realized that it's very important that that women continue their learning journeys in their careers. Yeah, and usually when it comes to the learning journeys, first and foremost, it is staying updated with what the latest trends are, latest technologies are, what the needs of the market is. But more than that, there's a lot of women-specific learning that is required to be able to manage your time, manage your guilt, okay, manage biases, etc. if you want to succeed in your career. And the third thing through which you can actually get all of this as well is the community. It's building that strong network and building that strong network of people who are going to push you up, who are going to inspire you, motivate you, guide you, mentor you, instead of pulling you down and telling you your career is not important. So at HerKey, we're really looking at a very multi-pronged approach in solving this problem of career engagement amongst women. First and foremost, it's been very important for companies to open up their doors for women. You know, like I remember there was a company that once came and told me that, look, Neha, we've gone through this whole process and this whole exercise, and we're very proud to tell you that we have identified exactly which jobs we can open up for women on JobsForHer. And I looked at them and I was like, what do you mean? Like, I want every job. Yeah, because there is no job which is not a job for her. And I think changing that mindset amongst companies, saying that there is no job which is not relevant for women, is very important. Second, of course, comes in the learning piece of it, where companies need to invest a lot of their L&D efforts in moving women up the ladder. So, so to ensure that, hey, when those pivotal times come where they feel that, I can't handle it, I want to scale down, or I don't have time to upskill myself, I'm not going to invest in upskilling myself. Companies need to have these learning interventions to ensure that women are staying and rising. And third, of course, is from a community point of view. So on one side, of course, diversity is making sure enough women join the workplace, but inclusion is making sure that they feel like they belong in that workplace. And through the power of community, that can do wonders. So a lot of companies are now working on specific women's networks and ERG groups, and ensuring that women feel like they have a voice. They feel like they have a network of other like-minded women, and they feel that they can grow together in this journey.
Right. So yeah, you've quite had a journey convincing these organizations initially when you started. I think stories as well. But what do you say to companies apart from social initiatives? Why should company invest their funds and their energy into bringing women into their workforce as well? What does it add to them? If you could, tell through this podcast to all those companies.
Of course, absolutely. And by the way, companies exist for their bottom lines. We're very, very cognizant of that. Okay, we have yes, this has a lot of social impact, but that's not the reason why companies partner with us to get more women in. Okay, there are lots of activities they do from their CSR budgets which impact socially. This is not one of them. Hiring is not one of them, okay? Because hiring at the end of the day has to be by merit. Now, the reason why companies want more women is because of that positive impact it makes to their bottom line, right? Like one, There are tons of reports that have shown that companies that have a more diverse workforce end up outperforming companies that don't. And the reason for that is because with that diverse workforce, you get diverse perspectives, diverse capabilities, diverse mindsets. And when your consumer base has both genders, so should your employee base. Yeah, because finally, it is much better to have a woman who is designing products, coming up with marketing strategies, coming up with sales, doing the entire channel when your audience is women. Yeah, and that is something, for example, why FMCG companies are trying so hard to get more women in. Second, of course, is that this is in this war for talent, you cannot win unless and until you have a wide access to talent. And if you're only going to go after that average working male in particular companies, everybody's going after them, you will never be able to win this war. You have to look at diverse talent pools in order to be able to lower your cost of hiring and get more talent in. And third, of course, is the kind of employer brand and goodwill that you build. Because when you showcase that you're there to do good for your employee base and for creating women's careers and creating their talent pipeline, it is a great retention way and it's a great employee satisfaction as well, because an employee feels much more aligned to that company when they see that the company is creating so much goodwill.
Right. And of course, as a woman who generally, there's a lot of things that woman learns at home that can be optimized. Those skills can be optimized at the workplace as well. And you've optimized on that. That is where you started. You restarted your career, right? So yeah, that's again that. Okay, great, awesome. Moving on, coming to you and taking one aspect of HerKey, which is helping women restart their career after a long career break, right? So, as someone who has you personally restarted your career way back when you started HerKey. So, what are some external and internal challenges that a woman face after getting back on their feet after a long career break? That's one question. And second is, how does HerKey help these women not only get back to the jobs, but also get back to from where they start, from where they left off, rather than starting from very entry level positions. So yeah,
Sure.
if you could answer these two.
No, absolutely. So I think the biggest problem that women face when they're restarting their careers is this loss of confidence that they feel. And that's something that every woman on a break has in common. And of course, the longer your break has been, the higher the confidence loss is. Because you feel that you feel like you don't remember anything that you worked on in the past, and things have changed too much and you can't catch up. Two, you feel that you're not going to be able to juggle both worlds, because you've been full-time, you've been either full-time mother or full-time housekeeper, and now suddenly you're going to have to juggle 2 or 3 jobs. And third, of course, there are lots of biases, right? Like at home, you're constantly being questioned that kya jarurat hai, why do you need to work? And at work, you're being questioned that are you really serious about your career? Given the fact that you took this break. And that's why, with all of this in mind, you do feel this huge crisis in confidence, and that's very tough to overcome when you're getting back. And that's why when it comes to HerKey, we ensure that, again, we make sure that that woman, when she walks into that door for the interview, she doesn't walk in on a back foot. Yeah. So in fact, we have something called the Restart Her Academy, which is specifically for women on a break, where we actually train them. It's a 6-week training program. We get lots of scholarships for it. So it's free of cost for women to go through that program. And we train them on how to, first of all, project themselves on their resume, how to project that break on their resume, where they can actually flaunt it instead of trying to hide it. How to talk about it in an interview, where they feel proud of it and they talk about the skills that they learned in their break and how it will help them in their work. And how to also make sure that they are negotiating well for what they deserve. And that brings me to your next question, which is, finally, it's very important to remember that a salary discussion is a negotiation. Yeah, where the job seeker needs to make sure that she is getting enough pay, and the employer is definitely going to be negotiating to get the best candidate at the best price possible. Yeah, right. And that is why making sure that you have done the research in terms of this kind of a role, what kind of budgets would be assigned to this kind of a role, and that again you can find out by going through a lot of different JDs on the platform. Also, you have actually leveraged the community to figure out what are the kind of interview questions they had, what kind of salaries should the different roles be at, what helped them when they were negotiating helps deeply. And third is, of course, the kind of work that we do with companies themselves, right? Like, so where, we always tell companies that instead of asking last CTC, why don't you instead talk about the budget you have for the role and see the woman is fine for that. At the end of the day, it just needs to be equal pay for equal work. Now, in situations where supposing a woman was in testing, okay, she had 5 years of experience in testing, then she took a break for 7 years, and now she wants to get into content writing. And we see this happen very often. Yeah. Now, when she's going back to content writing, she will be starting off afresh because that's not the experience that she had earlier. Okay, sure, she might be able to fast track in her career and grow rapidly, but when she's just starting off, it will be at a starter level. Supposing she's going back to testing, okay, now again, if she was into manual testing, her salary would be very different from if she has upskilled herself in automation testing or Selenium testing, right? Then the kind of salary that she can demand will be much higher. So that's a salary is a very nuanced approach that we must take, and at the end of the day, it should just be equal pay for equal work. Now, supposing that woman is not at all sure, okay, about what she wants to do and she wants to try out different things, then another great route for that woman is by taking a returnee internship. And this is very similar to an internship you would take right after you graduate, which could be a 3 to 6 month internship with a company where you're only being paid a stipend. But during that time period, you can ramp up. Okay, you can get skilled, you can get on the job training, you can understand where you're good, what you want to do. And then at the end of the internship, that's when you negotiate what your salary should be, because then it will be taken as a lateral hire. So there are lots of different ways that we are looking at tackling this problem when it comes to the wage pay gap when a woman is getting back to work.
Yeah, these were very practical actually. So that's almost like a masterclass on how you can do that. But okay, great. Quickly, tell us what are some of the most women-friendly companies that you work with?
Oh my God, there are too many. I mean, the fact that we have 15,000 companies on the platform to give you an idea.
Which ones are your favorite?
I can't do that. I cannot do that. I will get killed.
Which is why I asked that question.
Okay, but I do have one favorite, okay, because they're the company that actually stood by us right when we started. Okay. Yeah, I think there are 2, 3, but okay, one of them is Accenture. Yeah, I think soon after I had started JobsForHer, I was and I was summoned to their office, and I was interrogated for an hour. Okay, me and Pritha. Pritha is one of my starting team members. Okay. So she and she's still with us in the company, and she started off as the first sales member in my company, and then she started heading our sales. Okay, after many years. And we were interrogated for an hour about every aspect of what we do and how we do it and what we plan to do and why do we think this problem exists and what is our solution for it and all of that. I remember when we walked up, we were like, whew, okay. I mean, what was that? And then Accenture, they actually really held our hands through this whole journey. Because they were actually at a pretty evolved stage when it came to diversity initiatives. And we were still learning. Right? We just knew that this was the problem and we were determined to solve it. They, in fact, had a lot of interesting ideas and solutions and thoughts on how we can go about it. Okay, so there is so much that we learn by just working with them. And of course, it's no surprise that Accenture is one of the few companies where they put out this goal to be at 50-50 by 2020. And I think they're there. Yeah, because the kind of initiatives that they've been running across the board when it comes to recruitment, retention, advancement. And it was no surprise that they had a woman who was leading the helm, right, with Rekha Menon being there in Accenture. And they were hiring women across the gamut. Yeah, it was in technology, it was in sales, it was in BPOs, it was in operations. So they really taught us, we really learned, and we're very proud about the work we've done with them.
Okay, shout out to Accenture guys, for sure. But yeah, lovely. Yeah, that's such heartwarming to hear that. Uh, Coming back to quickly the financial side of this, what is the business model of HerKey? How does it work?
Sure. So our business model is, I mean, it's very, very easy to think about it from a LinkedIn sort of a model, right? Where the user, so the women obviously use the platform completely for free of cost, and we make sure that they get enough access to opportunities, learning, and communities on the platform. Now, the more talent that we get onto the platform, the better it becomes from our B2B side, yeah, which is our company side. And they are the ones who pay us. And with the companies also, we have a freemium version, okay, where companies can come and post a job for free. But if they want to be promoted, if they want to build a very quality talent pipeline and engage with the talent pipeline, that's when they pay us. Yeah. So in short, we have two large programs that we run for companies. One is called the BEAR programs, which is from a recruitment point of view. It stands for branding, engagement, and recruitment. Because again, when it comes to women, it's not enough to just post a job opening, and get candidates to apply. You can do that anywhere. Yeah, you actually have to reach out to these candidates and talk to them and tell them why your company is a woman-friendly organization. And the second program that we run is the Lens program, and that stands for Learning, Engagement, Networking, and Showcasing, which is a framework that we run for a lot of retention and advancement programs that companies have for their internal women. So we're looking at it from both ends. How do we get more women in? How do we get them to stay? And how do we get them to rise?
And what are like the future plans for HerKey? Where do you guys see yourself? Let's say 5-10 years down the line. How do you want to be recognized as?
Well, we already are, and we want to continue to be India's largest career engagement platform for women, and through the platform, we want to connect them with all the women's career champions that are out there, which includes employers, experts, and each other. And this area is still so nascent and so unsaturated that we have a long way to go to really create that kind of impact that we need in India, and that's in fact one of the reasons why we raised the funding also that we did last year. We were at about 3 million women then, and our aim was to grow to 30 million in 5 years, because that's the kind of need of the hour in India itself. Over time, of course, this kind of a problem exists worldwide, and we will definitely also look at using the learnings that we've had in India, which is one of the toughest markets for women's career engagement. Using that learning, how do we also broach that to international markets and, ensure that women are, because the problems between caretaking and work and careers for women are universal. And there's a lot that we have learned from there that we can then extrapolate in other geographies.
Yeah, for sure. And how much, have you been also able to penetrate into tier 2, tier 3 cities and further? How much of your crowd, your talent comes from these cities?
So this was actually a big shift that happened during the pandemic, where we suddenly saw a big influx of talent coming in from tier 2 cities. And the reason for that was really because of the kind of remote working opportunities that we saw happening during the pandemic. Until then, when there weren't that many jobs in the smaller cities, and that is why it was tougher for women to even dream of having a career. But once these remote opportunities became so abundant, okay, you saw a lot of tier 2 talent suddenly realizing that, hey, they can actually also earn a living sitting at home. And that spark came in them. Over time, we're also looking at how a lot of women returnees can also, earn that financial living through entrepreneurship. Yeah, and that is also one area that we see will develop hugely, especially when it comes to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So even though jobs might be less, it doesn't mean your earning potential has to be less.
Right. Fairly said. So we talked about entrepreneurship and we talked about funding. Congratulations on the funding, by the way. Bringing these two together, how is it, like raising funds as a woman in the startup ecosystem of India? How is it like? Has it changed any further? Is it changing? You've recently raised funding. How is it?
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And it's bad for multiple of reasons. I mean, this is my first time where I, went through the process myself. And of course, read a lot about it, heard a lot about it. But when you go through it yourself, that's when you truly understand it. Um, and I think there are multiple reasons for this. One is that, look, if 98% of the VC community is male, then you're obviously reducing the chances of a woman entrepreneur getting funded. Yeah, because subconsciously or consciously there will be a lot of bias that men would feel when they're hearing a woman founder CEO, single woman, sole woman founder CEO pitching her thing. And especially the bias becomes even bigger, especially because so many women are working on femtech, right? Because there's so much untapped when it comes to the needs of women, that of course so many women are coming up with products and services that will plug those gaps, and that is the need of the hour. But for the male investors, it's something they can't relate to. Something that serves 50% of the population is something that they find as a niche product, because that's just not something they can relate to, and that kind of puts you on a back foot immediately. Second big problem is that the language and the communication is very different when it comes to female founders versus male founders, right? And this is true also of female job seekers versus male job seekers, where when it comes to job seeking, if a male candidate is 60% qualified for the role, he will jump for it. If a female candidate is 80% qualified for the role, she will hold back and say she's not qualified. Same bias comes when you're pitching, where the male founder will, if he thinks he can do X, he will project 3X. If the female founder thinks that she can do X, she will project 80% of X. Now, the male VC is used to disproportionate projections by male founders. So whenever they get a projection, they will downgrade it significantly. Now, if you're downgrading significantly the female CEO's projections, then she doesn't have a shot. So there are all these problems that exist in the space, and of course the only way it will be solved is, one, having more women in the VC community. Yeah, and that is why it's no surprise that my lead investor was Vani Kula. Even from 361, my co-lead investors, it's Nidhi Ghuman, okay, who are now the two board members on my board. In fact, we have only one man on my board, and he's diversity for us. The thing,
Sorry, you said that.
yeah, well, I mean, that's
what does he have to say on this? What does he have to say on this diversity?
He's been my advisor from day one, so he totally gets it. He feels very happy. Okay, and in HerKey, those are the diversity numbers we track internally, right? Like my HR has targets of getting men into certain teams where there are like way too many women in already. Yeah, that's what diversity means for us.
Wow.
The second thing that we need to do is we need to change the language of communication that women use right now. Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you are pitching to men, you need to get on the same wavelength. Yeah, you need to equalize the level playing field, and women have to hold that baton of making that change themselves. Yeah, so I think making sure that you have very good mentors, very good sponsors, you're networking strongly. Okay, you are also pushing yourself to be more risk taking, more aggressive. I'm not considering these as bad negative words, but embracing ambition, yeah, and then showcasing that. I think that's important. So I think the change has to happen on both ends.
Yeah, for sure. Embracing ambition is for sure. Also want to add to that what you just said about diversity, where you have one man on on the board. Is that what you call modern problems?
Not yet. Hopefully, yeah. The future is female. The future is female. The current isn't.
Yeah, for sure. So when you say the future is female, I'll quickly talk to you about that, because it wasn't always like that when you started, for sure. Like I always say, you've had a very interesting journey. Anybody can read through it on the internet, for sure. Right, so how have been your learnings all throughout this, in riding against the wave when you started in 2015 to now kind of leading that wave? How and what have been your learnings? What was something that you could see back then that others couldn't? And how were you able to get through that? Yeah.
I don't know if I could see it or not. I think I was very comfortable being the biggest fool. Okay. I mean, we became the largest player in women's careers pretty early. Some other players which were in the space also bowed out. Yeah, it was a very unsexy, tough problem to solve, which was, getting women interested in the careers. It's much, much easier selling, food and fashion and love and relationships and sexual health and advice when it comes to women versus telling them here's a job. Yeah. Okay. But I think the the reason why we could stay true to our vision was also the fact that we stayed bootstrapped for a really long time. Yeah. And the starting team also that we had in place, they were all women returnees. Okay. The team that we built up over time also, everyone was extremely vision centric. And I think that made a really huge difference, because there were several very, very challenging, difficult, times during the company's life cycle, right? Where you constantly questioned whether we're going to be able to crack this. We always knew that this was a problem worth cracking. We just never knew if we would be able to crack it. And then I remember when COVID hit also, that was March 13, 2020 was actually the toughest day because all hiring went on freeze and we weren't sure if we would survive. And we did have to also, do some reduce our team size, okay, let go of one of our offices and basically reduce our costs drastically. And the ones who were left also, I remember that day where we said that, what, we need to promise to each other that we will stay strong, stay standing strong because we owe it to the women who we serve. Yeah, and that is what really kept us going. And everybody, and my team is predominantly women. Yeah, so all the stuff that you read about how women were battling home and work and all of that while working remotely, my women were going through it too, but they still worked really hard through the whole pandemic. And then the only thing that we actually took a chance on at that time was that we made a call and we wrote about it and we pushed it and we said that the pandemic will end up being the best thing to happen for women's careers. It was because for the first time flexibility wasn't a barrier anymore. And until then, flexibility has always been a barrier for women's careers. And now suddenly everyone was open to giving flexibility, and now everybody was asking for flexibility. It wasn't just the women. And that is why I remember in April itself, we actually put a down payment to host India's largest virtual career fair for women that August. Okay. And we didn't know if there'd be enough jobs at that stage, but we just, took the chance and we said by August, things will be better. And of course, we ended up, that was a huge success. We had 3,000 women coming into that career fair. We had lots of different companies coming in. And so actually it was the pandemic that was that watershed moment for women's careers. And finally, after the pandemic is when we realized, look, the tide has turned and now we are riding the wave. Because, and the really biggest reason for that was that we persevered when things were really, really tough, finally, after all those years, I started JobsForHer in 2015 and finally in 2021 is when we turned profitable. We had huge amount of demand for women talent and we were of course the largest player when it came to women's careers. And since then, of course, it's been uphill, but as any entrepreneur will bet on, the journey ahead also I'm sure will be full of ups and downs.
Yeah, for sure. Great, yeah, awesome. The fact that you mentioned about flexibility, yeah, that has the friction that was earlier there has definitely reduced, and that helps women. And you are definitely leading the way. But just want to, this last question, and then we'll quickly wrap up. This is where I want to come back to you again. Again, when you started, and you mentioned this before in the public that, when you started, you were not afraid of failing. you were more like afraid of succeeding and having to stay busy and being away from husband and kids. So which is again, which brings back to me that question of mom guilt, of probably wife guilt, or if that is something relevant.
There's
But
many mom guilt.
yeah, yeah, the husband will manage himself.
Husband was actually very, very happy that I was getting back to work. Okay, so I don't call him every day and ask him, what are you returning home?
Yeah. Great, right? Awesome. So what I've seen so far with every mom entrepreneur is there's a story that they tell themselves to keep themselves calm, because at the end of the day they do feel the mom guilt, and they try their best at it. But there's a story you have to tell yourself. What is that story that you tell yourself?
Okay, I completely agree with you. Like, this mom guilt doesn't go away. Yeah, in fact, actually, just 2 weeks back, I was telling my CTO that I need to leave early today because I'm feeling some major mom guilt, because for the first time ever, my son is now in the eighth grade. For the first time ever, I overslept and I didn't wake up in time to see him before he left for school. And he's so big now that he didn't even bother coming and waking me up. And when I woke up and I realized that I had missed school drop-off time, I was consumed by guilt. And so that day, at like 6 p.m., I quickly packed up everything. I was like, I have to leave. I will need to spend some time with my kids. I didn't see them in the morning. So yes, even though they're 14 and 11 years old, okay, the mom guilt still resurfaces plenty of time. And of course, my CTO is a male, and he was like, okay, he was like confused that I felt so much guilt about oversleeping on one day.
Yeah.
Uh, but the thing is that I think it's important for us to be aware about this and not feel the need to fight it or have to overcome it. Okay, I think it's something that we need to learn how to deal with. Yeah, and sometimes I feel like we need to use it as a strength also. I also feel that because of the mom guilt, our lives are actually more enriched. Because we make sure that we will also spend enough quantity and quality time with our kids as well. And the amount we get from that life experience is priceless, right? I mean, of course, the joy is real, but besides for that, even the life lessons that we get, I'm a much better entrepreneur because I'm also a mom. Yeah, there's so much that I learn from parenting that I take into the workplace. And then there is so much that I learned from being an entrepreneur that I can take to parenting. Especially as my sons are getting older. One, I want them to see their mother working her ass off. Okay. I want them to feel like this is normal. Second, okay, I actually, there's the stuff that I learn at work. Like, for example, being able to tell them about AI and ML and data science with real life examples of what we are building at HerKey, okay? That is so much of an enriching parenting experience.
Yeah.
And I think when we start looking at life as a continuum instead of as a seesaw, okay, both sides then will be able to benefit instead of thinking that when one is benefiting, the other one is losing. So that is definitely my story, and that I tell myself that, look, this is not a seesaw, it is a flywheel.
Right. And have you ever thought of, how what do you want your kids to be in the future? How do you want them to turn out to be? Have you ever thought about those things?
No, absolutely not, because it's their life, right? And it's their journey, and they're going to have to walk it and live it. At the end of the day, we are just there to support them in wherever life takes them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would have loved to have that kind of environment at my place as well. Sorry. But no, yeah, for sure. On that
luckily I had that growing up too, and like at every different decision. Like, I first of all, I studied finance, then I got into education, then I got into pharmaceuticals, then I was a full-time mom, and now I'm running a tech startup. Yeah, who knows where people are going to land up and end up in life? Yeah, and who knows what is the best path for them? And which is why, and growing up, I think when it came to my parents also, I think they were very clear that we just need to do well. And of course, if we can do well by doing good, nothing like it. I think it was then easy to use that as an overarching concept to lead your life.
Yeah, of course. And, whatever, of course, you learn at your home is what you take to the corporate world as well and to your careers as well. And which is also because that's inherently in you, which is why you've also been able to build a successful business, help other people build through it. Right. So definitely comes from there, and we could definitely see that. But this was a very lovely conversation, Neha. Thank you for being very honest, very straightforward, and very open. It was a great conversation. We would love to host you again, and for everybody else, stay tuned. Very fun conversations to watch it.
Great, thank you so much. Lovely chatting with you.
Yeah.